Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of the Leadership for the Now. My name is Florin, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And today I'm joined, as usual, by my teaching partner, Alena Ivanova. Hi, Alena.
Hello, Florin. Nice to see you.
Absolutely, yeah. So I wanted just to let our viewers know that we had to record this because of my travel schedule. So at the time of this streaming, I'm on a plane towards a client. So we really had to do this as a recording. So, but if you have any questions, just drop those into the comments because we're gonna go through the comments after the show. All right.
So sounds good. We are ready to go.
Perfect. All right. So why don't you, today we're going to talk about cultural intelligence. So why don't you just share with us what cultural intelligence is and how is impacting our leadership?
Okay, so cultural intelligence is the ability to relate to and work together with people who think, feel, and behave differently. And yeah, it feels needless to explain why this skill is so important, why this competence is so important, because we are surrounded by different people and we work on projects within different teams. We have people from all over the world working together in a virtual setup, in hybrid mode. So just the ability to connect, to relate to people, to create communication that really works is crucial for collaboration and for the results, and also for the enjoyment that you get from the process, for motivation.
Wow. And so help us understand, how is this different than emotional intelligence? Like,
This is a
let's the
very
cultural part, right? Because when I
yeah.
first when I first heard about cultural intelligence from you, I was kind of intrigued because I didn't consider that as being a important. I didn't even know what it is. So help us understand kind of what the difference is between emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence.
This is a very good question, Florin. So emotional intelligence is our ability to manage our own emotions and to recognize and relate to emotions of others. And then it doesn't, transfer across cultures, because within our culture, we might understand feelings and emotions, we interpret them, we express them in a certain way. And then in another culture, the same emotion might be expressed differently. It doesn't mean that it's a like totally different emotion, but for example, anger, in some cultures, it is expressed with a loud voice and extensive body language. So you can clearly interpret it, oh, this person is furious, it's angry. And then in some other cultures, it would be just very, reserved expression and maybe light smile on the face even. And for a person who got used to this very emotional expression of anger, this person won't be able to decode, this anger in another person to address it somehow. So we disguise our emotions differently across cultures. So that's why I would say emotional intelligence is the foundation, and then you grow it to cultural intelligence. It's the next level when you actually can, navigate across cultures and really feel when something is off and to be able to address it. So this is the
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah. So if I summarize in my understanding, right, is being emotionally intelligent, this is actually me being that in my culture. But having and applying cultural intelligence is me transferring this knowledge of emotional intelligence to other cultures and being able to work with them. Is that kind of a good summary?
It's a good summary. Though I think as we are as we are going to unfold the topic a little bit,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we will give it a little bit more depth.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So why don't you share with us what are some common misconceptions about cultural intelligence?
Mhm. Can I ask you a question, Florin,
Sure, of
here?
course, of course.
So how do you understand cultural intelligence in your life experiences?
In my experience, when I think about cultural intelligence, I relate to two experiences that I had. In one of my roles as a project leader and team leader, I work extensively with French people, and they are culturally, it's a big difference between Romanian, which is a post-communist culture, and France, right? And so we really had troubles to, as Romanians, relate to French people and the French leadership. And for me, when it comes to cultural intelligence, I come back to what we got as a training, intercultural training. So we got, first kind of why French, leaders are leading in the way they lead. What is the French culture, even like eating and kind of cleaning the plate with a piece of bread. For us, that was a sign of poverty, but for them, it was a sign of respect for the the kitchen, and also it was a time when they were poor, and they've done that. So little things that for a Romanian, for me, like if I was rejected by I went with a request to my manager, and he rejected me. In other words, he sent me back to find another way. Well, I would take that rejection as, oh, I'm never going to ask you anything, and I'm done. What they meant was, well, I wanted to think a little bit more and come back with a better solution. So they, like in Romania, we say they kick you out on the door and you get back in on the window. That's what the leader expectation was of me, right? When I got kind of a no at my first ask. But in the Romanian culture, you never ask two times. That was what I was trained, right, in school. Well, I told you the answer is no. Why are you asking again? So this was a kind of cultural clash. So for me, when I talk about when I think about cultural intelligence, this is an experience that comes to mind when we needed to really understand each other cultures to be able to work together well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I believe all of us can relate to different, intercultural experiences. And actually, on the topic of misconception, I would say that there are two things that I think are important to pay attention to. There is culture as a system, and within this system, we learn how to navigate. So what is accepted, what is punished, what kind of behavior should be there for me to reach my goals, to be accepted, to belong, and things like that. And then when we move to another cultural context, very often we kind of keep those things we got used to do. So we got used to behave this way, and possibly our preferences are not the same. So the question here is to understand what is culture as a system, and what are my personal preferences? Are they aligned with that or not? And cultural intelligence is more, it's not just about like national cultures, because one person belong to minimum of 15 different cultures when we talk about gender, ethnicity, professional role, family role, and things like that. These are all small cultures. They make us who we are. So if we think like, if I meet you and you say, oh, I'm Florin, I'm coming from Romania, and I have a small notion of, okay, do I know someone from Romania? What kind of culture is this? So if I base my perception of you only on this, it's so limited.
Yeah.
So it tells me a tiny bit just about who you are. And, I can't really base my opinion on that, but many people do. So we take the national culture, and I work a lot with engineers, and they say, Alena, we always thought of intercultural as strictly like national culture. So it's not. I always use the metaphor of an invisible backpack, that you never know what's inside of that backpack. So you come from Romania, but you've been working in different countries, you've been traveling, so your experience might be very different, and it reflects on who you are. So it's one of the misconceptions that we limit our understanding of culture to only national culture. It's much more to that. But what is critical is to understand how our cultural background impacts our behavior, and how flexible we are to move within different contexts. And this is exactly cultural intelligence. This is this flexibility, cognitive flexibility. So just to give an example, I'm talking too much today.
No, no, no.
I'm passionate about this
No,
topic.
it's absolutely fine, and thank you for making that clarification that culture is not national culture only, and it's all the other layers. And you're absolutely right. After living in Scandinavia for more than 8 years and working with Japanese and Chinese and German and so many other cultures, and being part of Maxwell Leadership, which is an American company, I mean, all this has shaped Florin. So Florin has maybe very little in common now with the Romanian culture and more with the Western culture. So thank you for making that clarification, and go on with the example.
Yes, so it's I would give my personal example because I was born and raised in a very hierarchical culture, in a very competitive culture, and by my nature and personal preference, I'm a collaborator. I love co-creating, I love working with people, and for me, when I started my career, in a very competitive environment. It was like a survival mode. And I always felt that this is not the place I belong. This is not the environment where I can thrive. I had to be always, alert that danger is coming my way. I have to really stand for myself. And as I changed the context, and in my case, I just changed my environment. I moved to another culture and kept on exploring, different cultures. Now it's a sort of a like hobby, or this is the way I challenge myself, like integrate into different cultures. But then I found my kind of sweet spot where I can be myself, and where collaboration is valued. So it's a huge difference between, culture as a system and personal preferences. And then just investing time into developing this ability to navigate, and for leaders to be able to talk to different people, to feel, different feelings in terms of, okay, how am I formulating myself? What kind of questions do I ask? What do I notice about this person, about the energy in the room? Is it the right time to actually have this conversation? And things like that. So to be able to navigate and adjust your leadership style uh, is one of the key competences today.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be some of these uncommon leadership mindsets, right? That because like we had an episode on emotional intelligence, right? And we discussed how that helps leaders to really kind of be able to relate to and be aware of their feelings and emotions, but then also be able to read those and be aware of the feelings in their teams. And now, if you add, that's already a complex thing, but if you add now multiple cultures, and cultures being not necessarily nationalities, but cultures like cultures, because even inside of a nation you have maybe different religions, right?
Yeah.
And that create a microculture or subculture. So now help us understand, what do great leaders do? Like, what are some of those uncommon leadership mindsets that they apply to these international environments, to these diverse teams, that lead them to success?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Thank you, Florin. And I would like to also acknowledge the person who introduced me to the term uncommon mindset. It was Csaba Toth, and I can really recommend his book, which is called Uncommon Sense in Unusual Times. And uncommon mindset is about, acknowledging we always rely on common sense. But again, if we take ourselves in our context, some things which are common sense to us might seem very weird and strange, as in your example that you shared about working with French.
Yeah.
Some things might feel strange. It's just like, it's not common sense. So it doesn't mean that something is right and something is wrong. So uncommon mindset is about acknowledging what is common for me and what is common for another person, what is normal for me and what is normal for you, and what's the gap between. So developing uncommon mindset to understand that, it's not right and wrong perspective, but it's right and right. So how big is the gap? This is the question.
Mm.
And what do we need to do in order to bridge the gap? So do we have a common goal? So let's look at the whole situation from a totally different perspective, not from this point where I stand or that point where you stand, but from a neutral space, acknowledging each other's perspectives. So that's why we need to kind of step out from our understanding of what common sense is and apply uncommon sense. And also kind of suspect our judgments and our assumptions, because we are too quick to do those and to act upon those. So it's always good to, to be curious and to ask what it means, because we might assume that certain things mean, this thing, and it's the same understanding for everyone. I have a very good example from my practice. In one company I collaborated with, they had a survey and they asked employees about clarity of, career path in a
Mhm.
company. And they've got a very high percentage of employees stating that, yes, it's clear to me what are my possibilities here, how I can grow in my career. And then when they had debriefing discussions in small groups, they found out that their understanding of what career path was like totally different. For some people coming from more, competitive and hierarchical backgrounds, having clear career path was more about, okay, what do I need to do to climb the ladder? Because
Mhm.
it's so important. It's important not only, like, maybe it's not that important for me, but it is important for my family. It is important for my grandma and things like that,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And for others, having a clear career path, it was more related to the daily tasks that they have, to their like work environment, to work-life balance.
Mm.
So that's why it's for leader, it's so important to be so good at asking questions, like right questions, and feeling the energy and understanding how culture, how like personality type might impact our behavior. So these are some of the key skills, and we can also put here, like we can add here psychological safety that we also want to develop just to have these open conversations. And we need the level of motivation as well. And we need the level of diversity in thinking, just to, to have those different opinions, to have those different perspectives. And as a leader, you kind of you have to take everything on board. This is your responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. So the uncommon mindsets, right, are actually about challenging what we think it's common, right?
Yes.
This is so true. Like in a personal example with my wife Florina, we often have this discussion about, she has the kind of two sentences or two remarks that she makes when something. So we talk about, we joke about, disappointments are the gap between expectations and reality, right? So if you have high expectations but they are not based on truth, then you're gonna get disappointed, and that's the gap, right? So
Mm-hmm.
she would maybe order something online, they will not deliver on time, and she would expect them to deliver, and she will say, well, that's not normal. And I say, well, well, define normal. Normal for who, right? Maybe that's not normal in Sweden. Maybe that's not normal in Denmark. But this company is sending something from I don't know where, right? So for them, maybe it's normal sometimes to have delays, or you don't do something like that. And I said, well, some people do something like that. And we have this kind of conversations about, we, as we say, as you just mentioned, we kind of place our expectations on others. Like if I do things in this certain way, that's what I expect other people to do. And this is, of course, this is dangerous, because people are not like us, and what is important to us is maybe not important to them, and then we come, each of us, as you mentioned, with this big backpack of experiences, and as you mentioned with your example, um, for example, punctuality in
Mm.
France, right? In France, it's okay to be late 5-10 minutes, even a quarter. Like in Sweden, you have to be 5 minutes early to be on time, right? So that's why um, it's so important that you mentioned this, and so okay, I got it. Uncommon leadership mindset is about us being, being aware that we're not placing our expectations on others, and we challenge what we think it's common.
Yeah, it's a good formulation. And I would actually add here one thing that I often get this question. Okay, Elena, but how do I manage my team? I have people from 7 different cultures and this and that. So what do? I can't really, accommodate to everyone. So here we are talking about team culture. Here we are talking about company culture. So how do we build alignment? So, and it's not about having like strict standards or something. For, as many people say that, Elena, I asked for feedback in that interview and they told me that I was not a culture fit. And I also would like to challenge this, perception of how do we define what team culture is, how we actually create team culture as leaders, and also how we recruit people into this space. So it's not about, creating a box where we would like to fit people in, but it's more about seeing the strengths and weaknesses, how people can complement each other, and what actually serves us best. What's the level of our individual flexibility? How, as a leader, I can help people to develop this flexibility so that they find it more joyful, more kind of easygoing to collaborate with each other, to address issues. And also when we recruit people, then it's not about, you're not the right culture fit, but it's more about how can you contribute to our team culture? How can you enrich our team culture? Then we are talking about expansion, opposite to the box that we created. It already gives perspective. So both for recruitment, onboarding process, and then how you manage the whole teamwork, daily like social environment, relationships, tasks that people do together.
Yeah, absolutely. And my perspective on that, the leader needing to to lead a multicultural, and here culture is not nationality, multicultural team. I almost say that you should almost adapt your leadership style to each individual. I actually wrote a piece on that, in one of my latest articles, because each individual might also be at a different stage of their career development. Some might need a little bit more guidance, some might need less guidance, some might need a more hands-on leadership, some more hands-off. So that's why it becomes a big challenge when you have these leaders leading maybe a team of 20 people. Of course, it's a big challenge if you have 20 different, cultures or microcultures on the team. So it requires a lot of flexibility from the leader side to be able to manage each individual and each and take into account each culture. But also what I have found when it comes to company culture is more about not what we do here, but it's more like about how do we behave at work. One of the things that I take organizations through when we have a workshop or where they want to build a little bit of culture and team building, it's something that we call kind of a contracting. In other words, we ask some question about, what do we expect? So let's imagine we are at the beginning of a workshop. We have a one-day workshop. So at the beginning of the day, we want people to think about what do they expect of the day. How would they behave that day in order to be able to achieve that? And what do they need from the peers, right? And how do they need the peers the colleagues to behave in order to all of them as a team achieve that? So when we put all these three questions together, what happens is we talk about, how am I contributing to the culture? How am I behaving in this culture? And how I expect my peers to behave. And if we get an agreement on that, and I think it speaks about the culture, like the way we do things here. Each of them might do it slightly different because of their culture. But if we have kind of a common understanding of respect and what are it's acceptable or not behavior, I think that sets a good foundation for culture.
Yeah. Generally, having such conversations, and especially at the start of the project, or when you get a new team member, how do you integrate, right? So I always say that it's so important to. I mean, people are so reluctant to reflect on themselves. Like if you say that, okay, now we have a reflection session, so it just doesn't work, this way. So we have to be um, a little bit, I don't know, coming from the other side, sort of, and doing this, like helping people to reflect on their own preferences in communication, in feedback, in how they receive feedback, how they prefer to give feedback, and things like that, and how they manage conflicts and their emotions as well. What do they do when they feel demotivated? How do they address that? So to open up such conversations, I think just bringing, some fun activities as well, and doing it in light-hearted manner, or having some team traditions. And I know several companies doing three most important questions developed by Vishen Lakhiani, where each team member writes about the areas of their, like what kind of experiences they would like to gain in life. And it can be professional, it can be, anything they want from life. And then the second part is growth. How do they need to grow? What kind of skills they need to develop? And then the third part is how they contribute, their contribution, what they would like to contribute to. So people get to know each other a little bit better. It opens up space for conversation, and it creates, people understand that, oh, probably we have some common goals, probably we can partner up within this space. So we kind of entered the topic of, training,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
but it's all about creating the environment to have such conversations and for people to get to know each other a little bit deeper, in order to get a better understanding, from the top of the iceberg. So we go a little bit to this invisible layer to understand what drives them, what motivates them. As you mentioned, like as a leader, you need to feel that, you need to understand that at each person
Yeah.
in a team, right?
Yeah. So since we are here, like when you work with teams, like how does a cultural intelligence training look like?
Oh, it can be different. Thank you for the question. It can be very different. Again, it depends on the organization, and there are so many variables at play. Because we have budget, we have people. People need to get off work to be on the training. So it might look differently, but I usually start with some small workshops or analysis. So I use data,
Hmm.
because if we want to improve something, if we want to go strategic about cultural intelligence development, we need to use data and human-centric approach. So there are tools that I use in my work that actually can pinpoint the situation. What do we have here? And what are those things that we need to work on a little bit more? What are the things that are working good? And then we can build the work around that. Because if we look at the statistics, it shows that there's a huge percentage of, many companies invest into leadership training. But the thing is that they do it just to tick the box. And then what happens? It might not be strategic. It's something that comes on the top of everything, that, okay, we have to invest into leadership development, so this is what we do. And in my opinion, it should be a part of strategy. It should be integrated, not something coming on the top of everything else, but something integrated in the system. And then in this case, statistics also shows that people actually like have a 25 more percentage like chance that they are staying in the same company for the upcoming years when they get this high quality leadership training, when it is integrated into the system. And at the same time, there's lots of controversial statistics saying that almost like 96% feel that leadership training is crucial
Hmm.
and it's important to invest into that. but then 17% feel that it's actually working. So the gap is really huge.
Yeah.
So that's why to close this gap, it's so important to be strategic about that and to really integrate it into the system, and maybe start with some awareness training. So just to bring people on board, and then see how we can develop, better programs, and maybe coaching, or maybe bring in-house competence, and educate people, leading by coaching. And this is what your field, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
to lead you using coaching competencies, because this is also very important in our one-on-one conversation, in how we approach conflicts and sensitive situations, how we bring people through challenges.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you're almost building this tailored to each company, right? But
Yeah.
you have a method. So you start with an assessment, I believe, right? And then you kind of,
Yes.
because you need data to know where do you need to act, where do they need help
Oh,
most, right?
they decide where do they need, when you see data, you can't, like, you can't ignore, maybe you can ignore it, I don't know, but when you see data and it shows you that, okay, alert, we have to do something about that, and exactly, it's not based on guessing. It's, when some people decide to launch a leadership training for the company with good intention to develop leadership competences, and I think we need this and that, and then when I'm talking to people who are actually taking part in the trainings, their expectations and needs might be totally different.
Yeah.
So being aware of that it's not just, the decision maker might have a totally different understanding of what people actually need, and the real needs might be very different. So just to use data to pinpoint that these are the areas that we need to work on, and then to let them decide in which way would you like to work, what are your possibilities here, what's your willingness to actually go into, follow this path.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, so if anyone is interested in that, they should just reach out to you, right? Only is LinkedIn a
Oh,
good
please
channel?
do.
Is LinkedIn a good
LinkedIn is
channel?
yeah, LinkedIn is a very good channel.
Great. Yeah. Okay. So we are over time, as usually we kind of like these topics, and we are again over time. So why don't we end with some tips, some practical tips for people if they want to develop their cultural intelligence? What would you advise them to do?
So first of all, you have to be interested in that, right? So you have to have the drive and curiosity. You have to nurture your curiosity. And I would say one of the best ways to start, as I think it's a kind of a red thread across all our episodes, that you have to start with yourself. It sounds already, like a cliche, but this is true. Understanding your communication style, understanding how people perceive you, how you come across, and just being honest with yourself, and knowing exactly like how you behave in different situations, and starting sharing that with others so that they understand you better. This is the first step, I believe, and it's a like small thing, tiny thing we can start with, and then it creates momentum, and it gives permission to other people to actually look inside themselves and also share what works for them and what doesn't work. So if I'm intended to give you feedback, for instance, and I might come to you and say, Florin, I'm really curious, like how do you work with feedback? Like, what's your preference here? What's the best way to give you feedback? And, share what's the best way for me to receive feedback and things like that. So when we have this exchange, we already establish an open space for communication.
Yeah.
Just checking in with people and paying attention to that. And then, of course, training is definitely one of the ways to do that, but it should be systematic. It should be something integrated, and it should be something with the follow-up. where you actually work on specific things. When you see or you define the measurements, what would you like to get in the result of it? And then you are able to get back to it, to follow up and to actually measure and see if it helped or not, and if not, why, what happened. So it should be very systemic work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Definitely everything starts with ourselves, because while you were sharing that, what came to mind was, well, okay, so who is the interpreter of this data, right? Whatever data comes, like just us talking here, right? Me looking at this screen, at the camera, like this is information coming into my mind, and I'm the one kind of translating this into a feeling, so of course it starts with me, because it doesn't. I think this quote is something that I shared on one of the other episodes, right? So when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So who can change the way we look at things? Here it's about self-awareness, it's about self-leadership, it's about development, and it starts with ourselves, and leading by example. I think is the way forward. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing this.
Thank you, Florin. You wrapped it beautifully. You
Mhm.
wrapped it up beautifully, and sharing this, this quote as well. It's very powerful.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in today. We look forward to see you again with another episode. Thank you so much. Take care. Speak
And let
soon.
us know what you think,
Oh,
right,
absolutely.
in the comments.
Yeah, you use the comment field, and also if you missed this episode, you only see maybe this piece right now. If you write summary in the comments, we're gonna share with you the summary. So we're gonna make the summary in a beautiful kind of document that we're gonna share with you if you want to get that. If you missed this or you're not able to see the entire show. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Alena. Have a great
Thank you,
one.
Florin.
All right. Take care.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye. Take care.